To the November the 16th council meeting. You came here tonight. You weren't left over from some meeting earlier today, were you? No. Before we start the meeting, the first 15 minutes of our meeting we have open mic, and I would like to invite Doug Ray and his group up to talk to us about the really outstanding award you got for the Humane Shelter, the Henry Berg Award, which I understand there's not many handed out in this country.
Two.
So go ahead, Doug.
Two, yeah.
Two.
You know, we kind of started this journey back at the end of 2014, almost 3 years ago. And looking around, I think, Dennis, you were the only one that went through this, sitting up there on the panel that's left. You know, when I started this job, I knew there were two things I had to do. The first was to do right by every animal that came into that shelter, and the second was to do right by the community. And I knew if we did those two things, everything else was going to fall into place. And boy, has it. Our first full year, we saved 94% of the animals. Second year, 96%. And this year, we saved 99.3% of the animals. Thanks for that, because I was getting a little choked up over here, so I needed a second. But all of that's brought us to where we are today. The shelter was recently recognized as being one of the 2 best animal shelters in the entire country. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, that is like a crazy big deal. You know, when I started this thing 3 years ago, I knew we were going to be doing okay. I just didn't know we were going to be doing okay as we are. The Colorado State Senate sent us an accommodation in the mail last week. That was a pretty big deal. There's just a lot of things good going on over there right now. And it's certainly not because of me, it's because of these people behind me. They're the ones that do all the hard work. You know, I sit behind a desk all day and I push a lot of papers. You know, they're the ones that do all the hard work with the animals. They're the ones that do everything that's happening in the community. So they're the ones that really deserve all the kudos for these awards. And I really and truly hope that all of them understand what a big deal this is, because this is the 6th animal shelter I've been in, and this hasn't happened anywhere I've been. And again, I really and truly hope they all understand this is not, oh, ho-hum, this is good stuff. This is some really big stuff that's happening over there. So again, I wanted to thank staff, I wanted to thank the community, I wanted to thank you guys, because the elected officials really could have turned their backs on the shelter 3 years ago, and you guys chose not to. And I'm really glad you didn't.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. That is very impressive. There's got to be thousands of animal shelters in America, and we're one of them the best, and that's great. Great, thank you to all the staff and everything. And you know what? Did you want to say something, Lisa, or you've got 30 seconds?
We're going to need about 5
You
more.
always want to say something.
You know how shy I am. Lisa Hyams, Humane Society, Fremont County. I just want to mention that all of these people you see back here, and Doug has already recognized them, but I want to make you aware that many, if not most, of these people behind us are volunteers. They volunteer their time at our shelter to make better lives for these animals. We could not do what we do without our volunteers. Also, I want to thank Doug, because Doug really allows all of us there to do what we do best. Whether it's reaching out in the community, whether it's working in the kennel, no matter what it is, and he really gives us free rein to a point. And, and I just want to say that that's what a manager does. He hires good people, and then he lets them do their job. So I just want to thank Doug, and I want to thank our staff, and I want to thank every single one of our volunteers that made this possible.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So we would like you to gather up front here, and if the paper will take our picture. Do you have a big enough wide-angle lens there, Carrie? So why don't we meet down in front?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I got long pants on today, so.
Me too. Way too bad.
Is that fair? Yeah, okay. You're next. You're next. Scoot on in here.
Well, I want to get your band in
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, all right. Okay, it was a real pleasure. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council at open mic? Mr. Wait a minute.
Yes. Hello, Dennis Weed. I live at 14th and Rudd. Tomorrow's election day, and of course, I want to encourage everybody to get out and vote. I would like to actually say something about two specific issues on the ballot that one's gotten some attention, one hasn't really gotten very much attention at all. But ballot issue 2A is the extension of the Tabor timeout. And that is a really, really important issue that needs to be passed. It was passed, I think it's 8 years ago. It's going to expire in 2 years, I believe. And if we hadn't passed that Tabor timeout 8 years ago, a lot of the things that you see happening around town right now would not have happened. There's this thing called the ratchet down effect, and when the recession came rolling around in 2008, if we had not had that in place, our city budget would probably, I'm just guessing, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to guess it would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 million a year less than what it is right now. And so cumulatively, we'd be looking at $10 million less in budget that we would have had over this period of time. And $10 million has accomplished an awful lot of things in town. Look at the Riverwalk, look at Centennial Park, Macon Plaza, just the hogbacks. I mean, the list goes on. But there is just a tremendous amount of benefit that has come, and it is really important to pass it again. So I'm encouraging everybody to vote for 2A. And then, of course, the other the issue I'd like to talk about is 2B, which is important too. It's now, that's the lodging tax. And there currently is a lodging tax in Fremont County. It's the statutory limit in Colorado for a county lodging tax. It's 2%. Raises about $200,000 a year. Unfortunately, that's not enough money to competitively position Canyon City, Fremont County, and the Royal Gorge region in the marketplace when you're faced against the other tourist destinations in the state. I mean, some of the other similar tourist destinations, Pagosa Springs and Durango and Salida, they have budgets ranging from $500,000 to $1.5 million. And we're not getting our share of tourism dollars here. And there's the state of Colorado puts out numbers every year. And the latest numbers that came out basically said that of every $1,000 in tourist spending in Colorado, $3 of that is spent in Fremont County. That's 0.3%. We can do better than that. We deserve to do better than that. And so I'm going to encourage everyone to vote for 2B as well. And then I'm going to say this kind of sardonically, but a little tongue-in-cheek. I'm on a committee. It's called Citizens for Tourism and Economic Development. And we're the committee that was responsible for putting up signs around town. And those signs were paid for by private donations from mostly rafting outfitters and different attractions, the train and the bridge. And a lot of those signs have disappeared. I guess I'll say thank you. It'll save us a lot of time picking up most of them after the election because you've done the work for us. But I would like to just make the point that if the best opposition, those people who are opposed to the lodging tax could come up with is drive around town and steal all the signs, I guess that sends a message that they really don't have a very good argument against it. And that, you know, if there was a solid reason to be opposed to it, they would have been out there sharing those opinions and not just grabbing signs. So vote for 2B. Anyhow, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weed. Okay, we have a few minutes left. Anybody else would like to address the city council on open mic? There,
You're under citizens' request.
you're under, Dale, you're under citizens' requests. So we'll call you up during the meeting. Nice try. No. Okay, well, I'd like to call to order then the November the 6th, 2017 regular city council meeting. Is there anyone here, do we have invocation today? No? Would you all rise then for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Troutman,
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Here. Ekstrom.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Gill.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
Jaquez. And Meisner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Now, number 2 is a citizen's request to speak to city council. Now it's your turn. Dale? There. Sorry, you moved. Dale?
I'm Bryce Nelson.
Bryce,
and
rather. I'm sorry.
I'm board president with the Golden Age Center, and we just want to apprise the city of requests to support the center. The center has been self-supporting through grants and other funding mechanisms for about 56 years, and with the changing funding mechanisms and everything, some of those methods aren't working as well as they once did. And the city has been generous in helping us with our transit system, our shuttle, and we're grateful for that. But without the bricks and mortar, the staff, the utilities that the Golden Age Center supplies, we wouldn't have a transit system. And so we provide building, staff, utilities for those two programs to be able to operate in the community. And we're just requesting that the city consider providing some support for the Golden Age Center itself to keep us going, because without the center, again, we won't have those other, we won't have the meals and the transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Okay, we have Coletta Gaunt. Coletta? Is Coletta here?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. I am Coletta Gaunt. I have resided in Canyon City for about 20 years. However, I've been in and out of the town all my life. I have become very interested and involved in our senior center because I see the things that it does for the people. Our senior residents, how many there are here that we can't reach and don't reach. But the ones that we do reach have a support system that those of you that have never been a widow or a widower don't know anything about yet, and that's good. We offer meals 5 days a week, and where they're offering balanced meals and the atmosphere of friendship and support that these seniors all need. But at the same time, we have to watch that we can support this and keep it going. And that's where our needs fall short. We don't get the support or the contributions that we once did, but we hope that that will increase. Excuse me. We get volunteers that do all our serving and our cleanup, and we have a wonderful group of volunteers that do the dirty work. But we just need somebody to help us a little with the financial work, because otherwise we can't keep all these programs going. And even though we do not, we are not doing the dinner, the lunch meals, we're under contract with COG for that, we still have to supply the host, which means all of the facility, the cleanup, the utilities, everything that goes with hosting. I would appreciate anything you could do for us, any kind of support, and I would also like to invite each and every one of you to come share a lunch with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Colette. Okay, Deborah Taft?
Good evening. First of all, let me thank you for your service to this community. I'm the vice president on the board, and I'm sure I'm going to repeat some of the factors and facts that my colleagues are going to present to you for your consideration. We do have Fremont Transit. This is not just for our elderly who need to go to doctors, to shopping, etc., but we also offer that to anyone of any age who does not have the fortunate means by which to go to doctor, to shopping, etc. And I know that we're here with our hand in our hat asking for financial assistance. It's only because now, after 56 years of being good stewards with people's generosity, and because factors have changed over the decades, please consider that's more than half a century that we've been in this city making a positive input for everyone who wishes to take advantage. So not only do we supply the physical end of things, the lunches, dances, get-togethers, but also consider that in that, there is that spiritual component of community, camaraderie, fellowship. I noticed out in the lobby that we have sister cities, Russia, Mexico, Ouray in Colorado. You know, what a wonderful thing that we could extend to them, that this council could continue the fine legacy of giving to their seniors. So, I just want to tell you that whatever you give us, and we will be grateful, your return on investment will yield high. Not only are your names associated with your yes vote for helping us financially, but you can feel comfortable that you are now being, for sure in another aspect, a positive entity and a positive influence on our citizens. Because a lot of what we offer is a best kept secret for this community. Again, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, Jim Wiles. Jim?
We do thank you for giving us this opportunity. And we know that you have a lot of a lot of pressures, a lot of areas to support, and we're hoping that our center can be one of them. We do provide the public transportation, as was mentioned, and that one of the things that keeps that public transportation element at an affordable rate is that we use 25 volunteers that drive and take care of our buses. We have 7 buses right now, and we try to utilize all those buses. We do cover Canyon City completely. We cover part of the county, and we cover Florence and Penrose with that transit system. One of the things also I wanted to mention was I made a request for funding support from the county, and the county is considering my request. I asked them, I redid my request, actually, and I asked them for $15,000 for a new van. So anyway, if I know that was one of those important issues for this council. So the last I heard was that they are considering following through with that, but I have not had a yes vote from them yet. I'll let you know that. So I think the board members said just about everything. Our center is, we feel, an icon within the community. We do our best to provide services for those seniors, and we provide resources if we don't have the information or if we don't provide the service ourselves. We have all of the information for other agencies within the community. We do work with other agencies. We work with the other senior agencies for transportation even, if it's needed. It used to be Friendly Visitors, now it's Senior Solutions, Inc., I think. And so we utilize their services as well. So we try to coordinate. We coordinate with the Council of Governments on a variety of projects. And of course, we contract with them for the shuttle service because they do the admin portion of that. And let's see, I think that should just about cover it. But anyway, thank you very much.
Jim, did we get that, was that the request that you gave us a few weeks ago? Is it a new request you're talking about, or what?
It was a different request. Yes, I gave a different request recently to the county. That's why I wanted to let you know that it was for $15,000 instead of the 20 that I'd given to you. So if those of you that were talking about the potential of matching, so that you would understand that, I wanted that to be
But you
given to
haven't changed your request to us.
Right.
What? You
Well-
haven't changed the amount of money you requested from the city, have you?
I haven't, no.
So it's the
But-
same as. what
But
we-
if you were if you were going to do the match situation, then you would know that I was asking them for 15.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Meisner? Mr. Meisner?
I'm understanding your initial request for the agency funding was $5,680.
That was for the agency funding, yes, sir.
And we anticipated funding $3,200 out of that $5,600 specifically for use on the health and fitness program for the seniors.
Yes.
So as I'm understanding it, you're requesting an additional $10,000? Or what additional money are you actually requesting right now?
We're requesting 15.
And what's the purpose of that 15?
That's for the shuttle operation and combined with some of the Golden Age Center. It's a combination, but mostly for the shuttle.
Did you have something, Mr. Weed?
No, Jim covered it.
Okay.
So I thought the original request was instead of giving money to the shuttle, because you can get grant money for more readily for the shuttle, that you wanted that 20,000 to go towards the Golden Age Center. So
I would
can you
like
please
for that to happen, yes, if we could possibly do that. And that part of the request, yes. But if it's necessary to adjust that, then my feeling would be for the city council is to go ahead and consider part of that for the shuttle. I'd be open to that.
When is county going to have a decision?
I'm hoping any day. I don't know how you want me to let you know, but I could be glad to contact all of you and let you know what that final decision was.
And so if we did grant the funding, how will that money be spent?
Well, it'd be spent for the Golden Age Center unless a portion of it was earmarked by you for transportation. Because I know from past, transportation has been very important to the council.
Okay. And it was mentioned about how the facility can be very expensive to run, to keep the doors open, to provide the meals to the seniors. And I'd just like to offer, as I did to you over the phone earlier, but now publicly, to bring you to the table as we talk about in the near future a community recreation center, and that a community center could embrace the Golden Age Center as well. And that might be a possibility if we have a collaborative relationship, that maybe that too could help alleviate some of the pressure on your expenses, if we could work together to have a community center that also embraced our seniors as well and helped them move forward. So I'd just like to stress that. And also, if I understand right, Tony, the community agency funding, we have some extra money in there. And that's money that's not taxpayer money, but money from when people get tickets from the police officers, that they can choose to have it go towards nonprofit agencies in the community. And so that might be something we would consider in the future. I think we need to have more conversations about maybe that'd be a way to help the senior citizens out, at least in the near future. That, I think that would be a worthy cause of a nonprofit, money spent from those ticket donations. But I would like to see a profit and loss statement and be able just to see where we're going, just moving forward, just to be fiscally responsible to our citizens.
Yes.
But,
I have a copy of that actually with me. If we wanted to make copies for everybody, I'd be glad to do that.
And can I ask, do you have a rough estimate about how many people that you serve at the Golden Age Center?
Right now, we served 394 people, individuals, last year with the meal program. We served a little over 400, I believe it's 420, on the transit program. And I didn't get a count on the folks that come to the dances and are involved in some playing cards and some of the other issues. But those are the numbers that I have that are exact numbers.
Mr. Meissner?
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
Historically, I'm going to say historically, at least over the last couple of years, our intention with agency funding is to grant funding for specific projects or for that money to be utilized for specific expenses. I haven't seen. Does an actual request exist, Tony, that specifically lays out what these monies are to be used for?
Well, I think we can ask Jim to put that together.
I mean, that's one of the things that I would like to see in terms of
Okay.
whatever amount of dollars you're requesting, specifically what those funds would be used for. And I think there is the exclusion in the agency funding that would not be used for administrative purposes.
That's right.
Okay, can you have some of that available, or have it available for us for our general government meeting on Wednesday?
Okay.
Can we do that? Is that okay with everybody?
I can do that, yes.
It's full?
Well, it could be a handout, maybe. It could be a handout, maybe, but,
the staff can work with Jim, and then we can communicate to the council, but I don't think we're very far apart as far as their requests and our.
But can we do it by Wednesday? Or what?
Something tomorrow, yes.
It's
Okay.
Tuesday, okay.
Yes.
Because the idea is to bring it, if we need to vote on anything, to bring it back to a public session, which is the 20th of November.
Yes.
We would schedule it for part of the budget
The budget hearing.
for November 20th.
Okay,
We have time.
all right. So try and work on get it done this week, get it in by Wednesday. We'll do
Okay.
that. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim, and all you do for our community and all those
Yeah.
that came to speak on your behalf.
Is there anybody else?
that's all we have.
Okay, was that all? That's all the citizens to speak to the council? Okay, in writing? All right. We're going to move on to approval of the minutes for the October the 16th, 2017 regular city council meeting. and the October 18th, 2017 Vision Committee meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion and a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes from the 10-16 regular city council meeting and from the 10-18 vision committee meeting.
Second.
Second, Mr. Marquez. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Schumacher. Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Are there, at this time, are there any council member announcements? Mr. Weed?
Thank you. Two. Yes, there is a general government committee meeting Wednesday. It'll be in this room at 4 o'clock. And we are going to be discussing water rates and stormwater fees. And also, we call it an ordinance pertaining to junkyards, shipping containers as some things, dwellings or storage units or whatever, and screening requirements. So anyhow, some exciting stuff on Wednesday. You don't want to miss that. And then I just want to, the last time I got to talk about this was at our Vision Committee meeting, and the band was heading off to the regional competition. This would be the high school marching band. And at the end of the meeting, I had gotten a text from my daughter saying that they had come in first in the regional competition. And last Monday, they went to the state competition in Parker, south of Denver, and came back as the Class 3A state champions. So cheers to them. And hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to get a couple of them in here and bring some instruments and entertain us. But it conflicts with their jazz ensemble schedule. So anyhow, congratulations to all those kids. An absolutely amazing accomplishment. It's been 17 years since Canyon City took home a first place in state in anything. So that's pretty cool.
Good chance for football this year again.
Yeah.
Okay. Friday night, they played Durango for the playoffs.
That is correct.
That's correct, here in Canyon City.
7 o'clock, Citizen Stadium,
Bundle up,
first playoff game.
first playoff game.
Be there.
Okay. Number 5, adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Tony, would you review the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council, consent item 5A would be adopting Resolution 32, 2017, supporting the reauthorization of the Colorado Lottery Division. This is the funding source for the Great Outdoors Colorado, or GOCO, and the Conservation Trust Fund, in which the city has been a multiple-time recipient, everything from the Hogbacks, Arkansas River Trail to Rudd Park. So that would allow the continuation of that lottery division until 2039. 5B would be adoption of Resolution 3317, which is a contract with CDOT for the maintenance and operation of the newly constructed US 50 and Dozier-Steinmeier intersection. Predominantly, CDOT will be responsible for pavement markings, but most importantly, intersection signal at that location. 5C would authorize the city administrator to execute a professional service agreement with Collins Engineers for 6 pedestrian bridge inspections at a cost not to exceed $25,000. To date, none of our pedestrian bridges has ever been inspected, and 2 of the bridges at Tunnel Drive have never been load tested, so clearly that's imperative that we do that. 5D would ratify the city administrator's execution of the 2017-2018 Health Plan Third-Party Administrator Agreement with Meritain. That's an amount of approximately $61,000. They've done a really good job for us in managing our health care plan and cost. 5E would ratify the city administrator's execution of the 2017-2018 Health Plan excess stop-loss policy with American Fidelity Company. As you recall, last year, we had a stop-loss level of $250,000. The year before, 2016, it was at $50,000. The premiums were much higher when it was at 50,000, but I think the sweet spot, based upon our consultation with Meritain, would be to this year propose a $100,000 level of stop loss for a cost of approximately $275,000. So that's what we're recommending in this agreement. 5F would be adoption of a resolution 34/2017, which support a GOCO grant application by the Fremont Adventure Recreation Group for the construction of 2.7 miles of trail connecting the South Canyon Trail System, which the Rec District has developed and is fabulous, with the city-owned Temple Canyon Park. I know there's some language in there about a 25-year commitment. Clearly, we're restricted by Tabor to annual appropriations, but like all trails now in the city, which we have quite a few, and we're clearly growing more trails, especially at the Royal Gorge Park, we clearly have an annual commitment to those trails. They cost about $2,500 per mile to maintain. So roughly, this would be about $6,700 on an annual basis to maintain these new proposed trails. 5G would approve a revised and updated drug and alcohol policy for all city employees. Currently, there are 4 trigger points for being drug or alcohol tested as a city employee. First is pre-employment, or right after you've been hired. Second, if you have a work-related accident, that would trigger an alcohol and drug test. Reasonable suspicion, probably the most common. And finally, random testing. Random testing only applies to about 39 of our employees who have commercial driver's licenses, and that's required by the federal government under the U.S. Department of Transportation. But the biggest difference in this policy is that rather than having to be cited by a police officer if you're involved in a vehicle accident, that's the most common form of accident our employees might be engaged in, we will automatically require the triggering of an alcohol or drug test regardless of whether you're cited or not. Any kind of property damage would trigger a drug and alcohol test. Also, just to make it clear, the breath standards for CDL license and police officers is more stringent. It's at .02. As you know, legal under the influence is .08, so it's much more stringent. And for all other employees, it's .05. There's also a more stringent standard for marijuana. That level was 15 nanograms, now it's 5. So these are all more stringent policies to ensure that none of our employees is involved with any alcohol or drugs that would influence their employment with the city. Any questions on that?
You said only the ones with the CDL licenses are subject to random testing?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
5H would authorize professional service contract with O'Hallahan and Company. We've been trying all summer to get a property appraiser. Finally, we've got a good one here from Pueblo to do 5 property appraisals at a cost not to exceed $18,750. Then we have 3 bids. First one would be awarding bid 46-17 for an HP or Hewlett-Packard wide format printer, copier, and scanner to replace 2 machines that cannot do all 3 of these functions with Llewellyn Associates for a cost of $13,229. We had 4 bids for that, and that was the lowest and most responsive. Bid 5617 is for mechanical tank mixer for the city's largest 4 million gallon water tank to Medora Corporation for a cost of $9,680. We had 2 bids for that. And the final bid was 57-17. It was for 115 radio read water meters to Finish Line, which is the sole source since we purchase all the other radio read meters from them at a cost of $30,518.70.
Any questions of the administrator or anything? Mr. Meisner.
I'll start and let everybody else go a couple of times. I want to start with the intersection of Highway 50. I realize that that intersection is under control of CDOT. What influence do we have over the timing of that intersection? and the correction of the errors in that timing. In particular, the turning red of the eastbound main light when there's absolutely nobody there at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's been going on for months, and it seems like nobody can correct that.
So, no, Adam's had discussions with them. They are going through, and they've told us up front, they were going through a shakedown phase, see what worked, what didn't work. We clearly understand what doesn't work, but ultimately, they have final authority over the signal itself and the timing of it, but we'll continue to provide our input to them.
Well, I would like to do more than input, but put some pressure on them to try and alleviate some of the concerns, the outrage of the community and the timing of those lights, and the frustration.
Mr. Gill?
I pulled in from Denver the other day, 5 o'clock in the evening, 5:30, and there were quite a line of cars. The light turned green, 2 cars went through.
Yep.
The other 40 of us sat there and waited. I think there's a problem. I think it needs to be fixed. And that's eastbound coming into town. And it's like, 2 cars, are you kidding me?
It's that
Okay.
way on Steinmeier too, if you're not really quick.
Right.
1 car,
Yep.
and that's it.
Like I said, CDOT needs a little pressure or
Yeah.
whatever, because obviously it's failing us and our citizens, and it's not working as designed.
So I don't know how council feels, if there's something as a council, as a unit, can request their more advantageous attention to that intersection. I would certainly appreciate that.
Sure, I'll talk to Adam
Yeah.
about that. If we have to go slightly higher than the regional office, we'll do that. I understand your frustration.
Maybe we could get Kevin involved. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
They don't, they won't listen to any requests on any of those intersections. And the other problem, I mean, is the one that, well, off subject, but that left-hand turn off of, what's it,
Orchard.
Fremont? In front of the bank.
Fremont.
You can't do it. And seeing as the chief's here, I won't tell him how you do it, but, I mean, you can't do it legally.
We'll follow up and see if that makes these proposed changes happen. If not, we'll be back with you and we'll go further up the food chain.
I think we should see if we can get them to come here to a meeting, or I'd be more than happy to go talk with them in Pueblo.
Yeah, I mean,
I get a lot of calls. Mr. Arquez? Mr. Arquez?
Yeah, and I think it's very important because of the fact that, especially with that light, this, after 2 cars, it changes and everything else, you know, there's a possibility of an innocent motorist coming at that point, someone from the police department coming this other way, you know, not intentionally sitting there, and the light changes, and then there's somebody who can get a ticket when they really shouldn't get one. So it's very important that they do look at that.
Okay. No, this is our discussion, sorry. Oh, Mr. Meisner, Jim Moore?
Sure, if nobody else has a question. Resolution 34, I would request either that we pull that item or that we change that verbiage and exclude any commitment to a 25-year maintenance plan. I mean, the way that sentence reads,
Sure.
in my mind, I'm not an attorney, but it says that we're going to commit to appropriate funds annually to maintain the project. That, in my mind, tells me that this council is committing future councils to funding that. I think our intent would be fund all trails equally, but this particular trail would have no priority over any other trail in the system.
True. Or suggest if you want to just remove the language.
My suggestion was, and I had spoken with Jim about this, it's the final whereas on the first page, and pretty much after the word public, end it. And just get rid of that last clause and commits to appropriate. Just get rid of that part.
I could live with that.
So you'd have to stick an and in there just to make it read right. So it'd be whereas the city will retain ownership of this property and assures that the facility will be made available to the public. And then just end it right there. Because like Jim said, I'm not sure we can even directly commit a future council to a funding issue anyhow, so I think putting it in the resolution is kind of pointless.
So just get rid of the last whereas,
Yeah.
Well,
or the second to the last.
No, not the whereas, just get rid of the part after the word public,
period.
Period, public period.
And then to and.
Well, there's,
I'll leave the and there.
yeah, and then you gotta have the and at the very end of it, because there's another whereas.
We got it.
And then while we're on this, just grammatically throwing something in there, in the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas, you need to insert the word of after the word provision.
Of the city's trail building machine.
Yeah.
Are we getting close to happy on this? Mr. Meisner?
Thank you. Tony, I'm confused about the drug and alcohol policy on page 6, item 5.
Yes.
Why do we have a 72-hour window for notification of CDL employees, but only a 48-hour notification for non-CDL employees? Shouldn't those be the same?
I don't know if that was established by the federal government. I have to go back and check the federal regulations. But they regulate the drug testing for CDL employees.
Right, so I'm just suggesting
We
that
can make 'em the same.
non-CDL would be
Yeah, that'd be fine.
72 hours.
That'd be fine.
What section are you at, Jim?
Page 7, item 5, the second paragraph,
Yeah, to be consistent.
it's page 6.
Sure.
Page 6, item
That's
5.
section G.
Oh,
You said page 6, item 5.
Second paragraph.
It's,
See where it says 48 hours?
which page?
Yeah, okay, 48 hours, you saying 72?
And finally, I'm just confused as to why we continually are requesting radio read meters as a last request. Enlighten me.
They simply miscalculated the number that they needed for the whole system.
$30,000.
Conversion. Well, we spent a heck of a lot more than that to convert the entire system. This is the last purchase to complete that conversion.
But the question I have is, how did we miss 115 meters?
Where were they at? Were we
There's
billing them?
constantly changing customer counts, so it's not a static number, but I'll go back and double check. I mean, we have over 7,000 accounts, so to miss it by 100 is not abnormal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are we missing that many billings too?
No.
Just curious.
right. Presumably, that will give us some inventory for
Yeah.
new water meter or new water services. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
I still have some questions left after Meisner's. On 5C about the bridges and the study, my question is, after we do this study, on the engineering study on the bridges, do we have money to fix the problems that are found?
If there are, yeah, we'll have to make that a priority. It's clearly a public safety issue. Absolutely. We'll basically have constructive notice that we have deficiencies and they need to be corrected.
And is there any state funding to help address bridges?
Sure, there's some, but, you know, one of the good things, these are pedestrian bridges. They're a lot less expensive to maintain and upkeep than highway bridges or automobile bridges.
So I would hate to see us spend money in 2017 for a study, and then we don't have funds appropriated until
we're
10
just-
years later, and we have to do the study all over
We would agree.
again.
We're just waiting to see what the study finds.
And you had mentioned on the trails that we spend $2,500 per mile for maintenance.
That's
Do
an
we-
average cost, yes.
Do we actually maintain trails every single year of all of our trails? Or what's the realistic
Well,
timeline of
right now, we're
maintenance?
in a building mode where we focus on building our trail system. Particularly the Royal Gorge is a classic illustration. Last year, we had 1.5 miles. Currently, we have over 12 miles, and that will be expanded to 25 miles by next year. Once we get to that level, then we really will have to focus on maintaining them. South Canyon trails, they're maintained by the Rec District, and I think they do a good job. But our predominant focus would be the Arkansas River Trail and the Royal Gorge Park.
So how many miles did you say we have currently?
Between just the city alone, we probably have in the neighborhood of 25 miles. And then when you look at the South Canyon trails, I'm guessing, Scott, maybe another 10?
Yeah, but there are also different types of trails.
Yeah, they loop
Yeah,
and so,
so
but
we
we're
don't-
growing a great
We don't want to,
inventory.
we don't want to
Yeah,
confuse a mountain biking or a hiking trail with the Riverwalk.
Yeah.
The
Right.
Riverwalk requires much more maintenance
Yeah.
than,
As I say,
as does Old Skyline.
yeah.
absolutely.
Every year we have to go into the hogbacks and put those crusher fines back in for pedestrians.
Mhm.
So
Let's say
I
that-
was surprised to see the 2,500 per mile. That's not typical for a normal, I would say, hiking or mountain biking trail.
Right, because I know, and the HOA for Dawson Ranch has been working on maintaining their trails that have never been maintained
Yeah.
before, ever. And next year, or starting this year, we're starting to do that in cooperation with the HOA. And with Steve, he's been building the trails, from what I understand, he pays very close attention to creating trails that are self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a real art to it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important, like you
And,
said.
and
that
that's,
art.
and that's
Yeah.
what we're building up in South Canyon and in the Royal Gorge Park. Whereas the trails in Dawson are going to be very difficult to
Well, he's going to be
sustain.
doing some corrections to those as we're.
They're still going to be up and down the hill. And then, of course, you know, the trails in the hogbacks are the same way. They're right on the fall line and they just collect water, so.
Okay, my next question is for 5G on the drug testing.
Yes.
How much does it cost to do testing?
Depends on, you know, again, for the alcohol, I think it was $30, $40. Drug testing, we test in that case for 5 substances: marijuana, cocaine, opiates, amphetamines, and PCP. That drug panel is more expensive. We don't have that many tests annually, either on a probable cause or random basis. So it's
Okay.
not a significant, we usually budget a couple grand a year for just drug and alcohol testing.
And I guess my question is, in the letter, it says that that it's important to test all drivers involved in an accident regardless of citation. So what if there was an employee or an officer who was hit by somebody else, and they weren't the cause of the accident? Will they be tested
No,
for drugs?
if they're the victim and not the cause of the accident, they would not normally be tested. But previously to this policy, you could have an accident. We've had accidents where the employees were not cited, so therefore they weren't required to have drug or alcohol testing. We want to change that. We think there should be a presumption that they need to be tested. We should be absolutely cautious about any potential abuse of alcohol or drugs by our city employees.
Do
And
we
they'll be
need
put
have-
on notice by this.
Do we need to have clarification in the memorandum that if they're victims of an accident, that they would not be subject
We can
to-
clarify that, yeah.
to that? And my
Let
next,
me just comment, I don't agree with that. It's, if they're involved in an accident, either side, I mean, because at some point you have to determine responsibility for the accident. I don't know if that always occurs at the time the accident occurs. And, you know, sometimes that's the result of the trial, who was at fault. And I think the policy needs to be, if you're involved in an accident, you get tested. And, you know, it's fair enough. I mean, it takes 15 minutes.
Oh, it takes
that.
more than that. It takes several hours.
it took
Yeah.
you an
Gives them
entire
time to
day.
relax.
Now, we'll do whatever the council
Well-
wishes, but in virtually all the cases I'm familiar with the city, it's very clear who is at fault, and that's the party that goes down and gets drug tested. We have a lot of accidents, unfortunately, that there's no one else involved but the driver. They'll run into something. They'll back into something. It's, you know, we don't have that many actual classic traffic accidents. It's just more just stupid stuff.
Well, then for that reason, it shouldn't be an issue to have them tested when it happens, regardless of who's at fault,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Chief, what do you think?
There it goes.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Derek Harvey, Chief of Police. So there's actually 2 schools of thought with this, Mr. Weed, is that one way to ensure that people will get tested on a regular basis, that if they're involved in any kind of accident, whether it's an injury, slip and fall, or actually a traffic crash, that they're tested. There are financial implications for that, obviously. We recently had 2 police officers who were involved in a traffic crash. One rear-ended the other, coming to a stop sign, so both of them were tested. But I can tell you just from the employee's perspective, if they're not at fault for something, the general consensus is that, why am I being tested? Do you not trust me? So I can't really speak to the case law concerning it, but I can tell you what the general employee's feelings are about, I didn't do anything wrong, but I feel like I'm being penalized. So that, there is a consideration there as well. I'm kind of on the fence with this myself, to be honest with you. I understand the employee's perspective that if I didn't do anything wrong, why should I get tested? But at the same token, from a agency standpoint, if we're testing folks that were involved in something that could potentially result in loss for the city, either through a workers' comp claim or some sort of litigation that happens afterwards, there's a school of thought that says testing is better than not. But I would, if you're asking my official opinion, it is to support the policy that was submitted that only at-fault drivers or those at fault for whatever loss actually be tested.
Well, yeah, let me just raise an interesting point. If there's an auto accident, there is somebody who is clearly intoxicated who is stopped at a red light and gets rear-ended. That intoxicated driver is...
And that wouldn't change aside from the city policy. In the instance that I said where both police officers, let's say for the sake of argument that both of them were intoxicated, the criminal perspective would move forward regardless, because the elements of that offense is if you're operating a vehicle on the roads of the state and you have actual physical control while being impaired, that's a criminal violation. This is a little bit of a different ballgame here.
Yeah, no, and actually, I think, I hadn't even thought about this. I think maybe the more relevant point that you may not come up until, become an issue until later is this whole issue of workman's comp and possible injuries that aren't immediately obvious, and I don't know, it's just, I think it's a way of protecting the city. And, you know, and I understand the whole thing about, you know, I'm innocent, why should I be tested? But, you know, it's, I mean, I've got a fistful of CDL drivers, and the city has the CDL policy. Well, it's not, I mean, those you're innocent, but you still get tested. And you know, and that's just part of life.
Mr. Gill?
I kind of feel that if there is damage to city property, no matter what, there needs to be a drug test. Personal opinion. If there's damage to a vehicle, damage to city property, the citizen's property, then we need to either see if it's present or if it's absent.
And that's what this policy would trigger.
And I think it doesn't say, you know, I didn't do anything wrong, why should I do it? The whole thing is, it protects everyone, okay? If you didn't do anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. You know, so that concept, you know, I don't agree with, you know. Let's get it done, and when it's over with, you didn't do anything, once again, you're not gonna get in trouble, but it protects everybody. It protects the city, and it protects the employees.
Yeah.
Okay, should we leave it the way it is then? Is that consensus? Just leave it the way it is.
Which is,
Get te-
everybody gets tested.
Everybody gets tested.
Okay.
What
All
about city council members especially, right?
So if you don't have anything, you have nothing to be worried about.
I'm just
I
kidding.
have one more question, I'm sorry.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
it's on 5H on the appraisal. The appraisals on the cover letter, there's 6 appraisals suggested, but on the bid, the contract, there's only 2. So are we only doing 2?
What was in your packet was a draft. Yeah, at the time of the packets were ready to go out, we did not have the contract. We do now have the contract in hand, and it is for 5.
It's for 5. And so one of my questions, I guess, to council is that a couple of those properties are private properties, and is that in the best interest of taxpayer money to invest, you know, a pretty considerable sum of money towards private property?
Well, we think there may be a public benefit in acquisition of those properties, or at least getting a benchmark, because we know of other potential suitors of those properties, and it'd be a fairly inexpensive way to hopefully stimulate their sale, either to us or to another party.
Is there any other opinions from council on that?
I think it'd be appropriate.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to know. With that said, Mayor, I would like to,
Oh.
are there any other questions?
It's just two minor things. Let's see, what do we got here? On item 5B, I believe.
B?
I don't know if this is really all that important, but on page 1 of Exhibit A, scope of work, it alternately refers to Highway 50 as a US Highway 50 and a State Highway 50. And I think all those should be corrected to say US 50 instead of State Highway 50. Okay, that's the first one.
Scope, okay.
See it? And then, where'd my other one go?
Did you say it was page 1 of 6?
Yeah. And they're just listed as SH 50.
Okay.
And other places in there, they're listed as. And the other one is a minor grammatical error thing, and I'm not gonna worry about it.
I think I got them all. I think I got them all.
Okay, Mayor, so with that said, I would like to move that we approve the adoption of the agenda and consent agenda with the
All.
following changes.
Okay.
5B to change the wording to US 50, is that correct? And on 5F to amend the 4th and 9th whereases as stated earlier. And on 5G to change the testing from 48 hours to 72 hours to make it uniform for all, if it's in accordance with state law
With federal.
That's federal
or
law.
federal law.
Second.
Second, Ms. Schumacher. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hawkes? Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Tony, do you have an administrator's report?
Dennis stole the thunder. We wanted to really congratulate the high school for their state
We
championship.
can do it
band.
over and over again, because
I
I'll
think
never
that's
get
it.
tired of saying it.
Those are over 120 kids. We
Right.
oftentimes focus on athletics, but there are more kids, probably spend more time on band than any other sport, and they should be recognized.
Yeah,
And hope, yeah.
pretty
No,
cold.
yeah, I mean, it was atrocious weather. It was 28 degrees. I was there. It's amazing. 10%, 1 out of every 10 students at Canyon City High School is in the band or the color guard. I mean, it's crazy. And I look at some of these other schools, and it's like at the football game. They played Mitchell last Friday, and they have 30 people in their band, and they have an enrollment of 1,300 students. I looked it up. So 1 in 40 students at Mitchell is in the band, and we have 4 times that participation at Kenny. I think that's amazing. This says a lot about the school district too, and promoting the arts in the schools. I think it's incredible.
Okay.
So,
Before we get on to the ordinances, Lisa, did you have a comment? Did you forget what your comment was, or? Where were you on that? You
were gonna tell us the highway lights.
Was it the highway?
Terrible.
You raised your hand.
Sounds about right.
Okay. The Steinmeier thing.
The intersection.
The intersection.
cars.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that one of the arguments with CDOT is the fact that if you can talk to them about the impact their light has had on the streets outside of the highway.
Right.
Grandview has become a freeway at 50 miles per hour across to Ute and up Reynolds to avoid that signal.
Right.
The traffic, the speed to avoid Steinmeier, I mean, we have constant cars on Grandview now. And I just want to say that would be something to use with CDOT, that it's severely affecting our city streets.
Yeah. Thank you. I've used Grandview too, but I don't speed on it.
Neither do I.
Chief.
Is he still here? Oh, I'm sorry. Chief's
I don't
still here.
use
Thank
Grandview.
God.
It wasn't me.
Say that. Okay. Number 7, ordinance number 38, it's series 2017. This is a second reading for special use review of recreational facility at 320 Main Street. Would you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 38, series of 2017, an ordinance amending section 17.24.050 of the municipal code to add thereto a new subsection identifying a certain land use permitted only by special review, a recreation facility, fitness center located at 320 Main Street.
Okay, could I have a motion and a second? Mr. Weed?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I would make the motion to approve ordinance number 38, series of 2017 on second reading.
Second.
Ms. Schumacher, second. Any discussions on that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Number 8 is ordinance number 25, it's year 2016. Is that true? 2016?
17, sorry.
2017.
Typo.
This is the first reading. It's an ordinance banning electrical personal assistive mobility devices. I will need 3 to introduce this ordinance. Mr. Weed, Ms. Schumacher, Mr. Gill. Would you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 25, series of 2017, an ordinance amending chapters 9.44, 9.46, and 10.04.150 of the Canyon City Municipal Code prohibiting the operation of electrical assisted bicycles, segways, and similar modes of transportation in public parks, on recreational trails, and city sidewalks.
Now, could we have a report from the,
I'll provide it to you.
okay.
As you know, currently the municipal code prohibits the use of motorized vehicles in cities, parks, trails, and we also prohibit bicycles and skateboards in the downtown between 2nd and 9th and the side streets off of Main Street between Royal Gorge and Macon. What this proposed ordinance would do would continue that prohibition of any motorized self-propelled vehicles to including mopeds, golf carts, e-bikes or electric bikes and segways from city parks, trails, and the downtown, with the 2 exceptions. One, electric bikes that did not have engaged motors could operate on our city trails. They still couldn't be on our sidewalks. And also, there is an opportunity for people that have disabilities to use, whether it's electric bike or a Segway, to provide them that opportunity, whether it be in a city park or on a trail, on the condition that they would not go faster than the pedestrian traffic, which typically is about 3 miles per hour. So that would provide an accommodation for people that would fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Titles 2 and 3.
Where do we start? But I'm willing to start. Oh.
Mr. Weed?
Well, my beginning point is, I don't understand the speed limit differential, if that's correctly stated, between these electronic devices and a bicycle. I mean, we don't seem to have any speed limitations with a bicycle on a trail.
These electric, the difference is when you engage an electric bike, it has the capacity to travel at 20 miles per hour.
So does a bike.
So does a bike.
Well, unless you're Lance Armstrong, but most people, Scott can attest to this, when you're in an environment like the recreation trail, on the Arks River Trail, and you're a cyclist, you have to be very cognizant of all the activity out there. It's the worst environment personally for a cyclist because there's people jogging, there's strollers, there's people walking 4 abreast. You have to be very conscientious about that environment, and typically you're going to be going at a very safe rate of speed. If you're on an electric bike and you have less control over your speed because you hit the throttle, you can go up to 20 miles an hour. You can do significant damage to someone hitting them at 20 miles per hour. Same with a Segway. A Segway weighs a couple 100 pounds. It can go up to 12 miles per hour. You would not want to be hit by one of them.
Yeah, but they also self-regulate their speed based on that traffic on the trail.
But sometimes, you know, a motorized piece of equipment have malfunctions. Maybe something gets stuck. Suddenly that particular bike is operating at its maximum capacity, and you can't control it. I can control a mechanical bike. I can put the brakes on, I could go down. If the throttle, for some reason, doesn't properly engage or is stuck, you can be driving at 20 miles per hour and doing a lot of damage. We just don't think it's safe. And so if you have to have an e-bike, we're simply suggesting you should have it under the auspices of the American Disabilities Act and travel at the rate of speed of the pedestrians around you. Because it is a motorized piece of equipment. It's not mechanical.
How did we determine that 3 miles an hour?
If you go out, the average pace of a person walking is 3 miles per hour, 20 minutes per mile.
I realize that, but where did that information come from? From Tony's reference or from my
I
reference?
think you can look up any reference to the average pace of a walker is approximately 20 minutes or 3 miles per hour. That's pretty average. Some people, if they're speed walking, can walk faster. If they're older, maybe slightly less, but that's a very typical rate of speed for an average walker.
Mr. Weed, go ahead.
I cannot agree with the 3 mile per hour. I mean, the average bicyclist, the average out-of-shape bicyclist is going to be pedaling a bicycle at 8 miles an hour easily.
For short periods of time.
For short periods of time.
Well, it's
On the
from-
Riverwalk. So, but
From the Cell Trailhead to Reynolds is a mile. You don't have to be in really good shape to pedal 8 miles an hour for 2 minutes.
If no one else is around you,
Well,
that's probably
it's not,
true.
it's not going to take you
But
2 minutes to get from.
minutes.
Yeah.
7
Yeah,
minutes.
7 minutes.
But when
Yeah.
you have multiple uses, I can assure
When
you,
you-
if you're
yeah.
on a bike, that's going probably too fast under the conditions of the surrounding
No,
environment.
it is. I walk on the Riverwalk all the time, and there's people that come zipping. I mean, I walk at 3 or 4 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and I watch those bicycles just hauling away from me, so I know darn well they're going twice
How many
as fast.
bicycles do you see on the Riverwalk when that happens?
How many?
Yeah,
I mean, they're one at a time, typically.
And what is the typical use on the Riverwalk?
Well, the typical
It's
use is
walkers.
walkers, sure.
With dogs.
No, it's
It's
walkers.
It's walkers with dogs. At least,
No.
as a cyclist, that's what I see, and I go slow or I avoid it. My point being is that 8 miles an hour on the Riverwalk that might be a conservative speed for a person to do consistently down the Riverwalk. But that's still faster than a walker. And when you overtake a walker, they are always surprised and always startled by a cyclist.
Well, isn't that why you're
Do
supposed to
are
say
you gonna try
passing on
and
the
tell
left?
me you ride a bicycle at 3 miles an hour on the
No,
Riverwalk?
and that's actually not what he's arguing here.
Personally, I stay away from it.
Yeah, but the mechanical,
much
the
congestion.
mechanical aspect of it. There should be a speed limit on the Riverwalk, and
Well,
I thought there was, actually. and
Well,
that's-
maybe there should be
there-
a speed
yeah.
limit, but I'll tell you what, I'm fat and out of shape, and I can get on a bicycle and pedal 20 miles, and I can go from Cell Trailhead to Reynolds in 3 minutes, I guarantee it, not put money on it.
The advantages of gravity.
You can you can download an app called Strava, and it will.
Okay, we're devolving here. All right.
But it's, I mean, I just,
Again, we're only suggesting here consideration for people that have ADA issues. We're not talking about the average person here. So they, in and of themselves, are going to be very cautious. They have physical disabilities. I don't think their intent is to go fast. It's just to provide some mobility. And so that's what this is geared for. This is not geared for recreational use. This is not something to have fun on the Riverwalk. This is for purely medical purposes, just like a wheelchair. I don't think you see any motorized wheelchairs going down the Riverwalk at 8 to 10 miles per hour.
well, yeah, they can't go that
That's
fast.
the right chair.
All right.
Well, I guess
Okay,
my
Ms.
argument
Smith,
is
go ahead.
that this has come to our table because there was one complaint of someone riding on the sidewalk in Main Street, and all of a sudden, we're coming up with this huge ordinance full of restrictions.
No, sorry, the state law changed. This was new legislation that allowed you to take this action, and that's why we talked to staff about this change, and that's why the ordinance came forth, not because of any, I'm not aware of any complaints.
So
I just
maybe
want-
no complaints.
I don't know if there's been any. I don't want to say there has or there hasn't, but what, the state law changed, and so it allowed you to regulate this type of bike, and that's why we brought it forth.
The e-bike.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
what was the name of the fellow that wrote the fairly lengthy letter And then Ashley circulated all those attachments. I don't know how many of you actually looked at all of those and looked at the slideshows. It's particularly about the e-bikes. I mean, I'm okay with all the rest of this, but I'm not okay with banning e-bikes is the bottom line here. It's,
So, regarding an e-bike, you can disengage the motor. So why do you need an e-bike? Why do you need to have the motor engaged on the Riverwalk? Or on,
Or on the hogbacks.
or on the hogbacks or any recreational trail? You can disengage the motor, and you can ride it as a normal bicycle.
Yeah, it's a normal bike.
sure.
And we allow them to be on the trails as
And
long
in
as they're
fact,
disengaged.
and in fact, the motor does
Yeah.
disengage normally at 20 miles an hour.
Mhm.
And I did have an opportunity to ride one. And it's a motor that actually allows you to go really fast
So it
for a
lands.
really long period of time.
So,
Well,
here's-
the question is, so you're asking me, why would somebody use an e-bike? Let's say you've got a person, I mean, and again, I don't know where the study was, it was from
Boulder.
And the numbers just showed how the use of e-bikes got so many more people out on their bicycles and how much more frequently they went out on their bicycles. And, you know, and it's, you know, not everybody is up to getting on a bicycle and riding 5 miles. It's, and
But I can't follow your argument here, though, because if you're on a bicycle and it has a motor, people that buy those bicycles want to go further distances. It allows them to go further distances
no,
easier.
I don't buy that at all.
I
It's a-
sell
if
these
you read
bicycles.
the article
The
that
study
says-
says-
It's to go
They can go
further.
shopping, they can do,
Correct. They can go for, and they can make, it's easier to
Commuter
pedal the
bikes.
bicycle. It's easier to commute.
yeah.
We have a recreational path here, and this recreational path is enjoyed by people mostly walking.
but the funding for that recreational path was also provided because transportation along Highway 50 and other busy streets is extremely dangerous, and there needed to be an alternative form of transportation. And a lot of people, the studies show, who are getting Segways or e-bikes are in the 50-year plus age. Their bodies are aging, they still want to enjoy the outdoors, but it's a little bit harder for them to get around, and this is just a little bit of something to help them to get along a little bit better and enjoy the outdoors. I don't see if we need to have it. I see us being more self-regulated, where there isn't a lot of problems right now. Why do all of these rules and regulations if we don't have a problem? Obviously,
Yeah.
ADA we need to form it clearly that ADA needs to be allowed onto the Riverwalk. The study in Boulder, they, and the other studies, a lot of people didn't even notice that there were e-bikes, that they were, pedestrians didn't even notice that e-bikes were.
Because they're not
On the
engaging
trail.
the motors. This is a bicycle with a motor on it. Our current code does not allow motorized vehicles on the Riverwalk. It already exists.
So, but that code was probably
It-
so
it-
old that
it's-
it was a
So,
consideration of dirt
if we're
bikes and
gonna have this
motorcycles.
conversation and open up the Riverwalk to motorized use,
So include mopeds?
then we need to talk about all motorized use at that point.
Well, we're talking
But
about
the
class
Riverwalk
ones.
is a recreational trail that you can pedal a bicycle on, you can walk on, you can take your e-bike on there, just leave the motor disengaged.
We
It's-
also think there's an issue of consistency. I mean, I know Jim Hoare's in the audience. From Ninth to McKenzie, there's a prohibition also of motorized vehicles. It's built into the easements that they receive to build that section. So I don't know how we control people if we were permit motorized vehicles, or in this case, e-bikes to travel from First to Ninth. I mean, who's supposed to, now police them not going beyond Ninth? They don't have a police force.
Well-
Because it's prohibited, and they could endanger their easements, because that would be a violation of people's dedication of property for the purpose of a recreational trail.
So on our committee, we had a lengthy discussion about this, and with Police Chief too, because originally the prohibition against even bicycles on sidewalks was just in the central business district. And Chief felt that actually that inconsistency, that gray area of where is it okay and where is it not okay, really causes a lot of problems in those gray areas. And his suggestion was prohibiting it on all sidewalks in town, because it's dangerous no matter where you are. And so that brought up two problems on the Riverwalk, that even though I'm more open-minded towards thinking progressively with e-bikes and segways, But one, our easements clearly state no motorized vehicles. Whether I think that should include e-bikes or not, doesn't matter. It's based on a legal contract. And number two, consistency in doing those regulations. With that said, both of our Segway companies do utilize the pedestrian bridge to cross on their tours. And we also had a great and lengthy discussion about all the other places to cross Highway 50. They're all very dangerous. If you can't use a sidewalk, 9th Street would be horrible to cross on a bicycle on the street, so would 4th Street. And 1st Street doesn't have a light signal for Segways who actually go quite slow. I would like to see, now Boulder, they did allow e-bikes on their trails. They started it out with a 2-year sunset, and then they did some studies and found that for them it worked just fine, and they took that sunset off, and now they're permanently allowed. I would like to at least see on this measure too, first of all, taking off the speed limit. I think that's ridiculous. If you have a disability, you're probably not going to be going 20 miles per hour on a road-based trail. But I'd like to see at least maybe a 2-year sunset to see how it would be to allow the Segways to go across the pedestrian bridge and see, so that they can at least get across, show the bridge, highlight the trail, and hopefully the future restaurants and retail that's there, and then get directly on the road as soon as possible. And I think that's a compromise that I think it should be reasonable.
We respect that, but at the same time, that's the most congested portion of the trail between 4th and 1st. I mean,
It's incredibly wide, and they're self-regulated, and
you also got lots of kids there, lots of families. I mean, we're just looking from a public safety standpoint. We think that's the most dangerous area in the entire trail right there.
well, I know that's what you think, Tony, but
Yeah.
maybe the rest of the council may not agree with that. I think maybe some people in this community as well may not agree with that, but there hasn't been any instances that we know of that have caused any complaints. That bridge is quite wide.
Yeah, well, and then, it's in reading through all the material, the state of Colorado has specifically designated e-bicycles as bicycles, not as motor vehicles.
So that they didn't have to regulate them in the way that you do a motorcycle.
Yes.
Right.
They've kicked the can to us.
Okay?
I mean, that's simply what they've done. It is still a motorized vehicle, but they didn't want to manage it. They didn't want to have to go through the licensing, so they kicked it as a bicycle.
Well,
It
is that
still-
your opinion, or is that a fact? I say.
That is.
That's your
that's the
opinion.
but the reason.
The state of Colorado recognizes e-bikes as bicycles, not as motor vehicles. And that's the way I feel.
Well, and I
about it.
think it's clear to say that when we're talking about e-bikes on trails, I'm talking about class 1, not class 2 or 3. And class 1 are those that don't require throttles, and it's a fairly minor boost to the riding.
It's a significant boost. It's 750 watts. 750 watts is a lot of energy.
I guess I'd like to hear from the rest of council.
Mark Chairman's bit here.
Well, okay, the e-bike thing. I know a couple, one of them, they're both in their mid-60s. One of them is a very, very avid bicyclist, okay, rides a lot. And her husband is not that avid. As a matter of fact, he's had back surgery and a few other things. One thing that this couple has done is they have decided to say, okay, we're going to ride every street in Canyon City and every trail by alphabetical order. And that's their mission. They're retired. That's what they get up each day and go knock one off of their list. If it wasn't for the e-bikes being allowed on the trails and this and that, then they probably wouldn't have that continuity. That ability for the gentleman to go out and get some exercise and do this and do that. I think the e-bikes, like I said, they should be defined as a bicycle. The part with the Segway stuff, we have people in town that run a business, that run businesses, and there's probably going to be more, where they bring the tourists in town and they show them our beautiful town. And unfortunately, they have to cross a pedestrian bridge and a couple other little short places. I think that those people ought to be allowed to show off our town, even if it is on Segways. I don't know what else I need to say on it. It's just, like I said, the e-bikes, who's going to see if they got the button pushed in or not as you're going down a trail? So it's unenforceable. Why put that in there? And then we have people that do a commercial business that entertain our tourists that use Segways on a very limited parts of the trails. I think they ought to be able to be designated, in those certain areas for the Segways and stuff. Personal opinion.
Okay, let's take a break and have, we have two people that went ahead and put in to talk. We'd like to have Jennifer Shepherd. Is she here? Would you please come to the microphone? Time.
Good evening.
Hi, Jennifer.
So I just basically brought this as a prop. I had called the radio station, KRLN, and I spoke with Mr. Jaquez, and I thought it was Mr. Hamrick as well that I spoke with. They had, I just had a couple questions, and they did clarify that as far as anything with a motor has to stay on the street. So my question was, I purchased this scooter for my daughter because it's very dark when she goes to school in the morning, and we live within 2 miles, so she can't take the bus. So I bought her the scooter to get to school. But if she can't be on the sidewalk, then she has to be on the street. So I agree that within certain neighborhoods, it's particularly safe. But then I brought up the issue of Highway 50. So my issue with Highway 50 was even during the daylight hours, if my daughter were going from friend to friend or after-school activity to after-school activity, and I was told specifically that this scooter, which is a 12-volt scooter, and its maximum speed is 10 miles an hour, has to be ridden on Highway 50. So my question is, I would just like a little clarification as far as police patrolling the streets. There are speeders, there are semis on Highway 50, 9th Street, 4th Street. Other issues as far as fines or a ticketing system. If my daughter does happen to break the law or the ordinance and want to ride this motorized scooter on the sidewalk, then what penalties is my 14-year-old going to face? So I know we're talking about e-bikes and Segways, but I was told specifically anything with a motor, which would consider this scooter right here, she would be fined or, have to ride on the street. So I want to stress again, there are certain neighborhoods which is perfectly safe. But her scooter here only goes 10 miles an hour, and the traffic on Highway 50 and all across Canyon City is 30 miles an hour. And we as riders are not to impede the flow of traffic. And I'm wondering how it is, if there's any way that we can get some sort of compromise as far as a bike path or a bike lane, if this is going to be passed. And again, what fines or trouble would come with breaking this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
What is that, Scott?
It's a scooter, with a little motor in it.
It's a motorized scooter.
Yeah, one of my
Now,
friends has this.
as far as sidewalk regulations, the only sidewalks you are not permitted to have something like that is 7 blocks between 2nd and 9th on Main Street. Any other sidewalk in the city, that can be ridden
Well, according to
legally.
this new ordinance, I think it broadens it to all sidewalks.
No,
No, it isn't.
No, it still only restricts, motorized bicycles and skateboards from the 7-block area of Main Street downtown.
Well, and I
Doesn't
think
restrict those e-bikes or Segways from any other sidewalks in the whole community.
in our committee that we had, we also discussed even for the Segways, that portions of Highway 50 that we would allow them to be on Highway 50 to get to, till they could get to a safer spot to travel. Police Chief, would you feel comfortable in talking about the importance of sidewalks, safety, and their interfacing with pedestrians, and particularly maybe addressing this women's issue?
Sure. So, and just kind of talking about our committee discussions, what actually was the issue is that many of the sidewalks throughout the city aren't wide enough really to have mixed-use traffic. So if you have 2 people essentially walking, and we talked about some of the 9th Street Bridge and a couple of the other ones, that the sidewalks are very elevated, they're very narrow, and the only way to to get past would be essentially to step off the sidewalk if somebody were coming at you in a Segway. That's not a safe situation. And not every sidewalk in the city really would meet the width requirements that the one on Highway 50 does. Highway 50 is a much wider sidewalk than the rest of residential neighborhoods throughout the city. Clearly, there's instances where traffic and pedestrians could get into some sort of interaction that obviously would be negative for the pedestrian, but our discussion was specifically around if you have mixed use, what's a safe width? And so the sidewalks on 50 were more appropriate really to accommodate pedestrian traffic and potentially some motorized traffic, but that throughout the city, really to be safe, we needed an engineering solution to be able to say that it would be safe for both motorized and pedestrian traffic on sidewalks generally throughout the city. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to one other person that put in for, is Gary Howard here?
Hi, I'm Gary Howard with Canyon City Segway Tours, and I think Councilman Gill and Smith kind of covered what I was talking about. I just want to be able to run a business to bring in the tourists to sell our community. I think we have a great community, and I'm just asking for some compromise to be able to use like the pedestrian bridge and some safe access points to get to and from the highlights in the community. And it seems like everything's based on this motorized vehicle, but I'm just curious. I brought a little information here, a map of the areas that I would be traveling on, and it seems that, can I pass this out or to the council, or is this not the time?
What do you have? What is it?
I just
Pictures?
have a
or-
map that I was suggesting.
Map of the
to
routes he
bring.
uses.
Would you want that map?
Sure.
Sure.
I guess so.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. And just a little information.
Thank you. Oh, here.
So I'm just not sure if everybody realizes that, that the federal government, segways are not considered motorized vehicles under federal law. So right there, that kind of takes that right off the board on these trails, doesn't it?
Say that again?
Well, I pulled up some information, some legal information, and it says that segways are not considered motor vehicles under federal law. Therefore, they are not regulated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Instead, they are regulated by the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission and considered a consumer product. So I'm assuming bicycles are consumer products as well.
Catherine, what's your
Well,
opinion
I-
on that interpretation?
That may be what the federal law states, but it's not relevant as into the regulating of city property, including sidewalks and trails. We're talking about traffic and not whether or not it's a consumer product, so.
Even if we use the term motorized vehicle?
So a Segway may not, I think a Segway falls under the other power-driven mobility device under federal law. It's probably not a motorized vehicle under federal law. I'm just not sure it's relevant for the discussion that you're having.
Which is what the state has done as far as these e-bikes go. Because if you classify it as a motorized vehicle, it is regulated differently. It is licensed differently. So the state has said it's a bicycle for the purposes of the exact point that Gary brought up. It's a consumer product and it's managed differently by the cities.
Good.
So to clarify, the state's saying it's not a motorized vehicle, but we're going to say it is. Is that right?
It's motorized because it has a motor. What the
I realize
federal
that.
government defined it as, for whatever reasons, defies the fact that they have motors.
And so does the state.
Getting around that.
And the state's the same way.
Yes.
But we're going to go the other way and say, because it does have a motor, and I'm being serious, because it does have a motor, it's a motorized vehicle, categorically.
Yeah, for the purposes of traffic control,
For the-
right? So the state doesn't want to regulate it like Scott's describing because it doesn't want to register and license them and do all that stuff, doesn't want any part of that. So
So
it's
what
saying
about
they're
on
not
the-
motorized vehicles. But we're saying for traffic regulation on trails and sidewalks, we're putting it in that category, a lot of other things as well.
Council, there's two things I want you to consider here. First of all, do you want to take a public asset and open it up to commercial use? If so, I would make sure that we know that that's what the city, that's what our community wants, to open it up for commercial use. Because currently, if someone wants to operate a commercial business on city or BLM or National Forest land, they have to get a permit. And so
Get a permit.
the argument was made during that particular meeting is that if we're going to be using the Riverwalk as a commercial asset, to permit it. Second, it's whether or not we want vehicles that can go fast, that are not currently permitted on the Riverwalk, and they can go fast. Do we want to allow those? And again, if that's the case, then we really need to make sure that's what the public wants. There's nothing, we're not, other than the pedestrian rule that was brought up, the motorized vehicles are already prohibited. We're not changing anything.
What I would say, I think you raise a really good point. Permit them.
There you go.
I mean, we,
Permit 'em for
the
a specific
city,
route.
the city currently allows private commercial use of city property, specifically, and I have nothing to do with it, Jeep tours on Fremont Peak. And that is, as far as I can tell, a huge benefit to certainly the tourism economy in town. And why would we want to treat Segways any different? I mean, Colorado Jeep Tours does not have access to every road and dirt road and trail that the city has access to. I mean, they've been specifically permitted to use a very particular piece of dirt. So rather than ban segways, if we want to limit where they can go or put conditions on it, permit them. I'm okay with that.
Makes
But,
perfect
I mean,
sense.
But you're permitting an activity that's currently prohibited. So
Yes.
if you do permit them, then you open the floodgates.
Well, no, we're
oh,
gonna.
no, it's,
permit
motor
it in a
vehicles are
specific
prohibited on the drive
area.
up Fremont Peak. It's, I can't go drive my car up there. It's, but Colorado Jeep Tours can drive their Jeeps up there. So, you hear this argument all the time. Well, if you let one person do it, you gotta let all the people do it, and that's a bunch of BS. It's,
Just a point of order, you do
Okay.
have a citizen trying to
Right.
give public comment.
Would you go ahead?
Okay.
Right, thank you. Mr. Howard, go
Gary, I
ahead.
kept you 1 minute.
No, that's all right. I like the debate. I think there should be a solution that everybody can live with. It is confusing topic, I mean, that they're not considered a motor vehicle, and then here everybody's debating if it is a motor vehicle. So I understand the confusion, but as a business owner and wanting to promote our city, I'm just here asking for some type of solution that I can operate a business and draw people to our community, which benefits us all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you.
Jim Hoare, would you want to add anything to this discussion, or you don't want me to point you out that you're in the audience, or?
Jim Hoare can always add
There's other
something.
committee members out there as well.
There's
that
other
may
committee
want to-
members? Who was on that committee? Raise your hand. Don't be bashful. Okay.
My name is Jim Hoare. I'm the director of the Recreation and Park District, and our district had the opportunity to address this issue 5, 6 years ago. We had a private businessman come in and request this same type activity on the Riverwalk. And just like this council, we kicked it around and kicked it around. We actually ended up addressing it at 3 different meetings seeking public input. And I did have the pleasure of sitting on this committee, and there was good discussion. A lot of our ending point came back to our trail easements that were not easily obtained by either the railroad or the VFW. And those are very important. And I sent a copy, I believe, of the VFW easement to City staff has requested. And it specifies in there, non-motorized. And most of the trail that I'm understanding, the Riverwalk Trail, is intended to be constructed and utilized as a non-motorized trail. And yes, you can get into the debate and the discussion, what's motorized, what's not motorized. You also have to look at the practical application of the users. By far, the largest users of the Riverwalk Trail between the college and Mackenzie Avenue are walkers. And Tony is correct, the average pace is about 3 miles an hour. And I've walked those trails a lot, as most of you have, and I've biked those trails, and I've biked most of our city streets. I like to ride on streets. There's a big difference between mile per hour and user. So we have to try, as regulatory agencies or management agencies of the public lands, how do we best avoid user group conflicts, especially those that might end in the result of an accident. And a lot of our discussion came back to children, strollers, dogs on leash, which is what we both require, our district in the city, and segways in particular. That's going to end up being a unfortunate encounter. It may be easier for you to try and separate the two, the e-bikes and the segways, and we talked about that in the committee meeting. We have clear guidance from our board, and it's probably not going to change because of our easement, that segways are not allowed on the section of the trail that we manage. So from Blackbridge East, we do not allow segways. We have not at this point had any problems with e-bikes, but I can understand how they could be a problem. Again, I can also see the benefit. They do encourage some people that don't pedal as well to get out and use them more often. But you know, that's one of the real benefits to bicycle use is the exercise. And I've been as fast as 40 miles an hour on a bicycle coming off of Poncha Pass, and I normally ride about 6 miles an hour on the trails. It's not an easy solution. There's no quick solution to it, but I would highly recommend to you that we not allow segways on the Riverwalk Trail. That not only violates the easements that we have in place, it also violates what we constructed the trails as, non-motorized trails. Who is allowed on there or authorized use for maintenance activities and those type of things, emergencies. Those are rare exceptions. We're talking about everyday use and encouraging people to use those. I'm not here to talk about your sidewalks or your streets, but I would say practical sense or common sense says that small scooter, I wouldn't ride that on Highway 50. But I really don't want it on the Riverwalk either. But according to the chief, is it allowed on sidewalks other than the business zone or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that child might have to get off that scooter, walk it across 50, and get to the north side. We also talked about how do we encourage our citizens to safely cross Highway 50. Highway 50 is a whole nother issue compared to the Riverwalk, compared to the Hogback Trails, compared to the South Canyon Trails. You can't wrap this in one neat package. It just doesn't fit.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
Thank you, Jim.
And that is one thing I went in first. Hogback trails. Those are considered recreational trails. And right now, we don't get regular patrols unless somebody hoops and hollers. We already have a few of our wonderful citizens that are taking their motor scooters or their little dirt bikes, the small ones, and walking them back in there so that the neighbors can't hear it. And they're already jumping the hills again and destroying what's been recreated back there. So,
Are you referring to dirt bike motorcycles?
yeah,
Well,
those are not allowed
those
back
are not
there.
allowed.
No, they're not.
That's not a
But by the
question.
time you hear them and you can call, or I'll just walk back there and see who it is, they're gone. But they've already ramped it up and they've gone from my street on up to Floral or on back up through Washington. It's very hard to catch them. I'm afraid this is going to, it's stated as it is, drive, operate, or cause to be operated in any motor vehicle, including but not limited to self-propelled, moped, go-kart, golf cart, motor scooter. I think we need to either be extremely specific on where these can be used, because the top of it says public parks, recreational trails, and city sidewalks. And I know the city sidewalks that they're not allowed on are just Main Street. But I think it needs to be broken down and a little more specific. I am in favor of it because I use the hogback trails all the time. And even the horses get going pretty good clip, and it's hard to slow down a 1,000-pound horse that's galloping down our trails. So we need to be more specific on where the usage can be. I agree with Tony on the speed. As one of the senior citizens in our group, it is discerning when you don't hear them coming or when they flash by you.
Okay.
It's kind of rude, but I just think, I believe in this, but if you can't enforce something 100% of the time, there's no reason to have a law. So let's get it so that our city is abiding by state law. Jim, quit laughing. And let's do this the right way the first time.
Okay, we've been beating this thing up for way too long. I think
Yeah.
I'd like to just take it off the agenda. It has not come to city council for discussion, maybe in a general government meeting.
Yes.
It's the winter time, there's not gonna be a lot of that, but look, this has gone on too long for this thing. Okay? So,
Well,
unless you wanna vote it down, I think we should just take it off the agenda and have another discussion in another time, whether it's general government, vision committee, I don't care, but not at a council meeting.
I'm just gonna go for a shot here and recommend that maybe we take it to a vote, but amend it where, for a 2-year period, we allow businesses to get a permit to specifically be able to access the trails to cross the pedestrian bridge. And either just that by itself, or on this particular map, they just want to access the trail from Riverside to go around PCC and back. And that's the only place that we would allow it. As far as for commercial use, I don't think we need to have, and also amend it so there's no speed limit. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's self-regulated.
Well, I would agree with that. And if we want to do this on a 2-year trial basis, I would say allow e-bikes. I mean, I'm real fond of saying, don't kill yourself solving problems that don't exist. And this is a problem that doesn't exist, that we're trying to solve. And so if we want to allow it for 2 years and see what happens and see if there is a problem, but I don't think anybody can disagree that there is not a problem right now.
So let's leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Leave it, there's no problem. Let's leave it the way it is. There are non-motorized use on the Riverwalk.
No, that's not solved, that's dodgy, you're playing state.
No,
You're playing state.
No,
now.
actually, what I'm proposing is, if there's not a problem, leave it the way it is. Because people have been riding their e-bikes on the Riverwalk for years. And whether the motors are engaged or they're disengaged, we don't know.
That's true.
But it's non-motorized use, and so you can pedal your e-bike on the Riverwalk.
So what
Now-
about addressing the use for the
Yeah, I
segways?
I truly do appreciate what you're trying to do. However, the section from the bridge on First Street to PCC, particularly up to the new pedestrian bridge, is narrow. It is really
Well,
narrow.
he's not asking to access it from First Street to the new pedestrian
No,
bridge.
he's actually drawn, it's along the Riverwalk, right above Riverside Drive.
Yeah, it looks like it's on the road.
It's,
It's that trail where John Nichols' bridge is.
there's another community member here that was involved. Brian, can you attest to the width of that trail so they hear from someone else?
Okay, again, we're taking this again, we're having a debate at city council meeting. I think it's inappropriate. We should take it to another area and then talk about it.
This is the Riverwalk, and Mayor.
Oh, I know,
Mayor, this is the
Scott.
Riverwalk, and before we sell it
Well, vote it
down the
down
river.
then. Vote it down and we'll take
Let's
it
just,
to another.
then let's.
Vote
We
it
go to
down,
committee,
or
we'll
do
still
what you
just be
want to do with
hashing
it,
it
but
around.
let's
I'd rather
just cut this off.
Solve it now.
Well, the thing I don't like about it is why all of a sudden is this going to be what we do, okay? You know, he provided us a map that's beneficial, I'm not saying it hurts, that's beneficial to him that was never there. So why are we going to do something just for this one purpose? Okay, I agree with the mayor. Let's get rid of this, take it to a special general government and discuss piece by piece. Whether we start with the e-bikes, get that resolved, the rest of it, but right now is not the right time.
Yeah, well, we need to cut this off. This has gone too long. Do you want,
Well,
Was that a
you also
motion?
have to understand that there's businessmen that need to have a business plan ready and prepared for the new season. And their advertising money and whatever else they have, they need to be able to plan what their business is gonna be doing in the near future.
does someone want to bring the motion up, or do you just want to let it die and move on?
Mayor, I make a motion for a bill for ordinance number 25, series of 2017, as it reads.
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any, and the motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Well, before it was introduced, but it's now introduced, but just keep in mind, we talk about e-bikes as being not allowed, but we don't specify as being engaged, and I had suggested that that verbiage be added. What we talk about, in the upper portion of each of those things, we talk about e-bikes as being just e-bikes, and then down below, we talk about e-bikes being disengaged. I think we need to differentiate between, when we're saying they're not allowed, we need to make for sure that that's in an engaged mode.
Okay, so it needs further clarification on
Assisted
number
bikes
4,
on
where it says a
item-
person may operate an assisted bicycle is defined.
On item A and 946-4 and 10-4-5, it just should be,
With the electrical motor disengaged on.
well, I
park
think you could
paths.
just say electronic assisted bicycle motor engaged, something simple. Where we have it disengaged, we also need to clarify engaged.
Bottom line is, they're permitted as long as the engines are not engaged.
Right.
The motors.
Okay,
With language to clarify disengage.
I think that's what. I think that's
I'm
what-
going to have two comments. One is I think we need to vote this down and, like the mayor said, discuss this more. And secondly, if approved as written, I think this is a technicality, but I don't believe there's any place in town that you would legally be able to ride a bicycle, anywhere. It says, I don't know anywhere in town where there is a road that is specifically designated and marked for such purpose. And that's in here multiple times. I don't know a single street or road or trail or anything in this town that, well, actually I do, Skyline Drive. That's a bicycle trail.
So bicycles are permitted on roads.
No, this says if they are specifically designated and marked.
I think it's marked for trails.
No, it says roads and trails.
Under state law, bicycles are allowed to use roads.
Okay, here we're back to debating the issue again, all right? Let's knock this off. We're not debating the issue again.
So,
Either we're not going to vote in the damn thing, or we're going to vote on it, okay?
so, Mr. Mayor, I would like just to try council out to amend the resolution to allow for 2 years to permit just to cross the pedestrian bridge, just long enough to get back onto the street again. So they can, so at least these businesses can highlight the red house at the museum and highlight the Riverwalk and hopefully the future development that happens there.
So that's amendment to his motion.
That's an amendment to his motion.
I'll second it.
Does everybody understand that?
So we're just going to vote on the amendment.
She wants to amend the motion to allow for a 2-year period, the Segway or any business to use a pedestrian bridge
With a permit.
with the permitting process.
So we're going to vote on the amendment first.
Yeah, got to.
Thank you.
We have to vote on the amended portion of that first. Ready, Mr. Mayor?
I guess.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
No.
Councilmember Schumacher.
No.
Councilmember Meisner.
Yes.
Councilmember Gill.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
No.
Approved by majority vote. Now we need to vote on the ordinance as amended.
Okay. 9B ordinance number.
Councilmember Ekstrom. As amended.
Just so I'm clear, it's as amended.
Yep.
So we'll be allowing segways.
2 years.
For 2 years on Black Bridge.
No.
On the historic bridge.
I'm sorry, on the historic bridge.
Permit, they have to have a permit.
Plus everything else.
How do they get on?
I'm not going to sell the Riverwalk away right now, so no.
Councilmember Jaquez.
No.
Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
No.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Denied by majority vote.
So can we go back to the original bill without amendment now?
I
Okay,
would
now
say
I-
this ordinance is going to go ahead and die and
Okay.
go back to committee level.
So we
Well, no,
cannot,
Scott wants to do it now without the amendment.
Okay, we can make another motion.
okay, then I make a bill for ordinance number 25-0 of 2017,
As written.
as written.
Second.
Was that seconded?
By
Yeah.
Mr. Hawkins.
Okay, just conversation. I think this is better sent back to committee to discuss than voting, than approving this right now.
Any more discussion on that? Motion made and seconded. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
No.
Councilmember Gill.
No.
Councilmember Schumacher.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
No.
Councilmember Meisner.
No.
Motion denied. Ordinance will die
Okay.
on first reading.
Now, I don't know how this happened, but I got to tell you, I'm not happy with this. This got to us from where? I don't remember it at general government meeting, I don't remember a vision committee meeting, I don't remember anywhere it coming to us till now. It's not appropriate.
So Mayor,
No, it did.
it was in a general government meeting. I was absent.
Well, I
You
must
may-
have been too,
you
because
were
I don't remember
absent, and
talking
then it-
about it
I
ever.
was absent as well.
So I just, we should have not, this is ridiculous.
Meeting, then it went to a committee, and the committee then back.
Well, it looked to me like it came right from here, from the committee to here. That's inappropriate. Okay, let's go on. 9B, public hearing, zone code amendment. Open, I'd like to open the public hearing at this time and we report from the city attorney.
So, as you will recall, we addressed some issues regarding Reed versus Gilbert under the sign code, and this section was accidentally eliminated from that restated portion of the sign code. We're not making any changes, we're just instituting something that was in there to begin with. It was just inadvertently omitted.
This was in the old sign code.
Yeah.
Just wasn't brought over.
Yeah, it accidentally got left out when we repealed. the
That's what I read. Okay. Any other questions from council? Any comments from the audience? Then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. 9B is ordinance number 40, series 2017. This is the first reading. I need three to introduce. Mr. Gill, Mr. Weed, Ms. Schumacher. Would you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 40, series of 2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 17.30 of the City of Canyon City Municipal Code by the reinstatement of Section 17.30.0575 entitled Comprehensive Sign Plan.
Okay, can I have a motion and second? Mr. Weed?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'll make the motion to approve ordinance number 40, series of 2017 on first reading.
Second.
Ms. Schumacher, second. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez. Councilmember Gill.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Oh, good, a liquor hearing.
Pass it around.
On a happier note.
Did you?
There should be a requirement that they would bring us a sample.
Yeah.
Sample. Okay. This is a public hearing
We'll call it mid-meeting refreshment.
for an application for a special event liquor permit, future of yesterday at 12 Riverside Drive. I'm hereby opening the public hearing. Could I have a report from the county clerk? Or a pint, I don't care. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is Maria Shraki and Ashley Sack, who's representing the Future of Yesterday Foundation, who's applied to this council for a special event liquor permit for December 2nd between 6 p.m. and midnight for their annual Prohibition Party. Notice of this public hearing was given by posting the premises within the 10-day requirement. This organization has conducted a number of events with no concerns being received. This event will entail food, live entertainment, dancing throughout the evening. Alcohol sales at this event are being conducted as a fundraiser for the renovation of the historic St. Cloud. Individuals aged 21 and up will receive a wristband, and any underage participants attending the event will receive a black X on both hands. Volunteers from the organization will be checking IDs at the sole entrance to ensure legal drinking age and will assist with the patrolling of the premises of the event. Volunteers have attended the liquor training that we have offered here at the city. Upon review of the application, it's been determined that the appropriate fees have been paid, the diagram meets the requirements, the applicant has obtained permission to use the premises, and the organization is in good standing with the Secretary of State. So with that, I would open it up to any questions you may have of the two ladies.
Okay, any questions of the applicant?
Girls, are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
Yes.
Is there a copy of the liquor code on file with your organization?
Yes.
How many volunteers do you plan on having for this event?
Between 15 and 20.
How will they be trained on the liquor code and liquor laws?
Most are bartenders in the area and have attended the city meetings.
Are you fully aware that you're responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code and that any violations of this code may be held against you and/or your organization as well as any future licensing?
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
Okay, with pleasure. The only concern that you may have is that we might have too much fun. This is our 4th annual event. Obviously, it is held at the historic Robeson Mansion. All proceeds go to the hopeful restoration of the Hotel St. Cloud downtown. This is a particularly fun and unique event because it is a costume-oriented party, so everybody who shows up to the event is in full regalia. It feels as though you have stepped back into 1920s, 1930s when Prohibition was, 1933 is when Prohibition was repealed. So we don't take that lightly, and we do make sure that everybody who attends the party feels that they have stepped back in time. So we're excited to host the 4th year and look forward to seeing all of you there.
Thank you. Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second from council.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the application for special event liquor permit for Future of Yesterday.
Second.
Mr. Weed, second. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Schumacher.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill? Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Congratulations and
Good luck.
Thanks for
Good luck.
Number 11 is professional services contract. It's recreation/aquatic center needs assessment and feasibility analysis. Could we have a report from our community? You're still here, huh?
Had
Dina.
to step out to put some drops in my eye.
Sorry, we did that to you.
Things a little
No,
dry in here, or what?
A little scratchy. So just a summary of the process. The city put together an RFP that was released in August of this year. Proposals were due mid-September. We received 2 proposals for this work. Both teams were interviewed, and we had some follow-up questions with one of the 2 teams. Ultimately, the team led by Ballard and King and Associates, teamed with Olson Lavoie Collaborative, was selected to do the work for a recreation/aquatic center needs assessment and feasibility analysis. And with that, the funding for this project is coming from 5 different sources. The first source being the City of Canyon City, who is putting in $11,150. The Canyon City Area Recreation and Park District is putting in $10,000. St. Thomas More Health Foundation is contributing $5,000. The Royal Gorge Bridge Company, $2,500, and Fremont County, $2,000. And so the contract is in your packet, and we are hoping to get underway sometime here in December, and the process should take about 4 months to complete.
Thank you, Dina. Any motion, any comments from council? Questions? Mr. Meisner?
Dina, we had a conversation, at least email-wise, about the, I'm not sure what to call it, but the visual or whatever they want to,
The deliverables for the illustrative site plan.
yeah. Is that in here somewhere?
It should be. Let's look.
I tried to find it. Doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
I mean, we wanted a visual representation of what this potential building would look like, right?
So on the top of page 10, so it says, it's under the bullet that says project cost estimate, but it has the 2 sub-bullets under that. The second one, develop a concept site and building plans.
Okay, thank you.
How could you get a plan if you really don't know what you might put there? I mean, I saw it, but.
Well, so through this process, there will be different sites that will be identified and evaluated. So through the end of this process, there will be a preferred site identified. It may not end up being the ultimate site, but there will be a preferred site through this process. Based on that site, coupled with the program that's deemed necessary for the center, a site plan will be completed.
Okay. Got it. Mr. Meisner?
The value of that plan, we believe is that if this is going to proceed, many people being visual need some kind of visual in terms of what are we talking about versus just a block or a bulge or a what have you. But that was the intent of what this concept building would look like.
Okay. Any comments from council? Mr. Weed?
I would just put out a cautionary note when they're doing this visualization. I don't remember how many years ago it was. There was a ballot issue for a rec center. I think that's what they called it. It was out by the Abbey. And it was a grandiose building, and it went down in flames.
Jim, is that the one that you have in the back of your file cabinet?
Yes,
Is that the
it
same one?
is.
It's,
Yeah.
I think they need to be cautioned that we're looking for the contents.
Right,
So-
so through this, just to clarify, through this process, we are getting in the illustrative site plan and concept plan. So it's a 2-dimensional plan drawing. If this would move forward beyond that and potentially to a ballot issue, we may have additional graphics done for that effort.
Okay.
And if you're talking about the scope, you're saying it was grandiose, part of the job of this market study is to determine what gaps there are in our community right now, what programs is desired, how much they're willing to pay for those programs, and then not only, and then they design it based on that, what would be successful for this community, and more than just building the facility itself, but how self-sustaining it will be over the years for maintenance, and what what the community is willing to put forward towards that. So there's a lot of data driven on that. So the size of that building really depends on what this market study
I was just being cautionary. I understand what the purpose is.
But yeah, we recognize that, and that's where that caution's going to come in on those stakeholder meetings. I would just like to recognize that there is a committee member in our audience, both in the back over here, and then the Recreation District as well is an important partner in moving forward with this. And I appreciate all those donors from our community who have helped make this possible.
Right. Any other comments from council? Could I have a motion then in a second?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we authorize city administrator's signature on professional service contract with Ballard and Keene.
Second.
Second, Mr. Weed. Any discussion on that motion? Having seen none, would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Is that it? Okay, we're going to have an executive session to discuss the Dawson Ranch stables. I would give, if you would like to have 3 minutes to say anything on your behalf, or we'll just go into the executive session. Would you have any preference? No? Okay. Then,
Before we make the motion to go into executive session, it's for the 14 people in the audience still here and the 3 that are watching at home, I would like to remind you all, tomorrow is election day. Get out and vote if you haven't already voted.
Well, and thank you for being here as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Meisner, you had your pencil up.
Pen.
Sorry.
Mayor and council, I move that the city council hold an executive session to hold a conference with the city's attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B, period.
Second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Schumacher?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Gill?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Mr. Mayor, I may be out of order, but I wanted to say thank you to council and city staff for taking the lead on the Recreation Center project. I think everyone understands that we have an important project at the district which will have some controversy associated with it. So we do appreciate the council and staff taking the lead on the Recreation Center feasibility study and needs assessment. We appreciate it. Thank you.